Today we are working on our very last flower right here in the corner. We're going to be using 936 for this stem right here, and we're going to be using a stem stitch and a little back or straight stitch for the little petals right there. So you already know how to work on our stem stitch. Doesn't matter which stem you go with first. I'm going to go with the one here that goes to the right. I think I'm going to pull my U that way. It's going to feel a little more natural for me. This one's pretty close to the border, so I'm going to just go right above it. Make sure I don't pull too tight on it. Once you get up here by the petals, you'll make about one last stitch. And then you're going to come straight down before the little X. Sorry, make sure my phone wasn't dying. Just right before that X. So we've gone straight down. Now we need to do the X, and it's just going to be two little back stitches or straight stitches. I don't know what you would consider them technically since they're so small. Probably a straight stitch since you don't go back and come back up. So just going to make a little X with those two. And then for the petals, they're just going to be straight lines. So you're just going to come up the top of the petal and kind of tuck your needle in a little to the stem, just so you don't see the finish of the stitch. It's not going to see the fabric underneath. Awesome. Now we're going to do the stem. Question always is, do you go over the border right away, or do you wait and get one stitch in? I'm going to go right over that other stem. It's a little bit longer of a stitch than I would probably prefer, but because the stem's right there, it'd be easier to do a longer stitch than a shorter stitch. Okay, now we're just going to finish the stitch by doing one stitch straight down. And now we're going to make our little X. All right, so for our actual flower, we're going to be using 3771, and we're going to be doing a French knot with just one single twist. Now, if you trace the way I did, you just kind of have an outline of where your flower is roughly going to be. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make kind of close French knots together near the center and then slowly move them apart so that it's kind of like a cluster of French knots, and then they just slowly, you know, get less and less as it goes out. So with this, there's real no rhyme or reason where you're putting your French knot. And it is only one twist, so they're pretty small little French knots. So I'm just going to put a lot close together, and then some will be a little further apart. And you can always put some in the middle and come back and add more if you feel like you think it's close enough, and then as you get towards the end you're like, wait, I think maybe I didn't do quite as many close together as I could have. You can always come squeeze in there and do a few more. So right now I'm just kind of working my way almost like a circle around the middle to get them filled in. Trying not to go over any of the green floss of that little X, just to help add a little dimension there in the middle of the flower. Maybe a little too far. And you can go outside of this line if you want. Oopsies. Oh, here's a good example, guys. I think I told you over here, if you ever have one that's sticking out a little bit, like I did, French knots are not an easy thing. Sorry, that got cut off really quickly because someone was coming into the room. Little kids. I've told y'all I filmed during quiet time. Okay, so there's a little bit of extra floss here hanging out, and with a French knot, there's no real good way of taking out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my needle up right next to that French knot, and then I'm going to kind of grab that extra floss and just tack it down. And now I'm going to move on. Keep doing more French knots. And if you think it'd be easier for you to do the outline of the flower first and then move inward, you can do that too. Whatever you think might be a little bit easier for you to determine what is far out stitches and which ones are kind of closer together. And you can also go outside of the border a little bit to help round out the flower if some of your stitches are gapped in such a way that it would make it kind of look a little lopsided. So some of these I can tell are a little too far apart, but I'm going to come back and fill in the gaps a little bit more once I finish going all the way around. Sometimes you think you're stitching really close together for a while and you're like, oh no, this is all too close, and then you start to spread the French knots out and you're like, oh no, I wasn't actually that close, and I can add more. Okay, so I'm going to come in here, start adding some extra little stitches. Okay, sorry, like I said, quiet time. I get interrupted, and it's okay. So right now I'm adding just more of those stitches close together to help it look a little more clustered in the middle. Okay, I'm going to turn this towards me a little bit so I can see it a little bit better. Okay. Just a little single twist. I like when it looks like one of those, what's that weed that little kids make little wishes on and blow them. That's what these remind me of, especially when you have little single twists kind of going further away from it. Looks like it's getting blown in the wind. All right, I'm gonna do one down here. Maybe one to the left of it in just a second. And later, once I use the iron to take away some of the pin marks, sorry, it took me a second to think of the word I was going to say, then I can see if maybe I might want a few more stitches, because sometimes those pin marks really can mess up your eyes visually to see. Yeah, I think I need some more here, some more there, which I think even now as I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh wait, let me add a few more closer together. And one right about out here. Okay, so I think I'm happy with that one, and so now you'll just do the exact same thing over with this one. So there are your French knot flowers, and next we can move on to the text.